welcome Len Caric. Thank you for coming. Len, along with his long-term business partner, Jim Rudolph, purchased the George J. Howe Company in December 2021. The Howe Company sells candies, nuts, and coffees throughout 20 states through grocery retailers in the hospitality industry. Len is CEO, and he led the acquisition of two other companies into the George J. Howe Company, Mr. Snacks, and most recently, the roasting plant of O'Neill Coffee. These are Len's third, fourth, and fifth businesses that he searched and acquired in his career. In addition, Len and Jim opened Smashed Waffles, a retail fast casual restaurant in Oakland section of Pittsburgh in 2022. The goal was to prove the concept and then to franchise. So I will let you get started.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for coming in to see me. Today, we're going to talk about entrepreneurship through acquisition. So the reason I have this talk and also teach us here at Tepper is because most people think of entrepreneurship as you do a startup, you live in your parents' basement for 5 years eating peanut butter sandwiches, and then someday, it launches and it's a big success. I take maybe an easier route. So I look for businesses that are for sale. They already have cash flow. They already have customers. They already have employees. Look for those opportunities and then go in as the owner and CEO. So the question I usually ask people is, do you want to be a CEO? You can go to school, you can get out and you can start to work somewhere, work your way up. Will you become CEO of the company? Chances might be slim, but in this case, you could go right to the top. So why am I here? I'm here because I love what I do. That's number one. Number two, it's a fantastic path to have ownership of your own company, control your own destiny, set your own schedule, be your own person, all of that. I am also here because I love working with smart, intelligent people, and I want to show them the way to the path of being CEO and owning companies. Okay? So, and as I mentioned, the path to entrepreneurship, there's a couple of them. You could do a new venture creation where you come up with a great idea. My problem was I don't have a creative bone in my body. I have no idea of what's going to be the next great thing. I copy everybody else. So with that kind of a background, I said, well, rather than copy, just go out and find somebody who's done something, buy their business and take it to the next level. That's what business acquisition is. The other thing that you can do in entrepreneurship is franchising. Franchising is a great path because franchising gives you an opportunity, as the franchise people say, to be in business for yourself, but not by yourself. So a franchise will have a proven concept that actually works out there. You can buy into that kind of a process, and then you run the business, but you do have a lot of help behind you. So that's a very good path for people who don't have ideas, but still want to do something and get started and go from there.
This guy is the bomb.
Oh,
The bomb. Listen to what he has to say about this bomb.
Thanks for that, Dave. I won't make that joke about I'll give you the envelope later with the cash, but I will give you the envelope later. Okay. The other thing I like to mention, it is a path to entrepreneurship that needs to be addressed, is social entrepreneurship. This is a business that has, as I say, the three bottom lines, which means it's concerned about not only a profit, it's concerned about people as well as the planet. And these are businesses like Tom's, which is a shoe company that was started where for every pair of shoes you buy from them, they give a pair of shoes to somebody who doesn't have shoes in a third world country. There's a lot of these things are out there. You can Google what a social entrepreneurship business is, but it's doing something with a cause, but still as a profit venture. It's not a not-for-profit. So what you have to think about is which of these appeals to you? And a lot of ways to think about it is, what's your background? Do you have some sort of an idea? Do you have some sort of plan to take a product to market or a service? Then, of course, that would be new venture creation. Do you want to be in business for yourself but need some help with an idea? That could be a franchise. Or in my case is, think about something that is out there that you could go in and run. What's your skill set? One thing about all of these businesses, all of these types of things, and I'm going to say this within a big asterisk, you always got to be selling. But that doesn't mean you have to be a salesperson. Okay, that's two different things. In business for yourself, you're always selling. You're selling to your customers, you're selling to your vendors, you're selling to your employees, you're selling to your bank, you're selling to this whole group, meaning you're talking about the business on a regular time. But that doesn't mean that that you need to go out and sell the actual product and services. But you want to look at your skill set. I was very, 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 very fortunate in two ways. One, when I was a little kid, I knew that I wanted to own my own business. Of course, everybody says that, but I put it to practice. I had a Kool-Aid stand. Why did I have Kool-Aid? Instead of lemonade, Kool-Aid cost a lot less than lemonade. So when I think back, some of these lessons I learned when I was a little kid, they really worked. The second thing is I had a paper route. This is dating myself. I have gray hair, so it's okay. But it used to get a newspaper delivered to your door, not read it on your phone or on your iPad. And I used to go around. What did I learn there? I learned accounts payables because I had to buy the papers from the paper guy. I learned accounts receivables because I had deadbeat customers that sometimes wouldn't pay me every week for that. How do you collect? You shut them off, all of that stuff. But anyways, I always wanted to do this. And one of the skill sets that my older brother, who's 5 years older than me, I finally told him last year how impactful this was. Probably 1, 2, 3 top advice I ever got. He told me get an accounting degree. Anybody in here an accountant? Well, I won't pick on him, but I'll just say the last thing I ever wanted to be was an accountant. But he said, be an accountant because you've always wanted to own your own business and you need to understand a profit and loss statement. It was very good advice. But anyways, you want to understand what your skill set is. And then what are your likes and dislikes? Okay. These are things that go into figuring out which of these top things you want to do. Essentially, what I'm going to talk today about is business acquisition, which essentially is a small private equity deal. The steps are very simple. You raise some money, you do it through debt, borrowing it from a bank, equity investments. You identify some target companies that you'd be interested in. You narrow your search, perform due diligence on it, negotiate a deal, and close. It's just that easy, okay? So you can see it's a combination of many skill sets: strategy, finance, negotiation, operations, and that's just to get into the business. But really, this is the steps that get there. It's not real easy, but it's doable. And it's very doable because I've done it several times and I'm not that skilled. Okay, here's what's the good about business acquisition. The good about business acquisition is that there's immediately cash flow. Okay, so if I go back to my example, if you got a concept and you're going to go out and try and sell it, some brand new concept, service, product, or something like that, there's going to be some level of getting customers. When you buy a business, you generally have customers. Okay, I usually say that when you buy a business, you're really buying two things. You're buying a customer list and you're buying employees that know how to run the business or do the business, I should say. And so this is an immediate benefit, is that you have cash flow. Okay, so hopefully you don't have to live in your parents' basement eating peanut butter sandwiches. And you get to work immediately on a plan to grow and improve the business. What's really exciting about this is the target that's best when you're looking at buying a business is somebody who is, well, let me tell you a story. So here at the Schwartz Center, back in the corner, there's a person that says the Donald H. Jones Center for Entrepreneurial Studies. This is why I came to Tepper. I had a small mom and pop business, truly mom and pop. It was me and my wife who were running it. And I knew that there had to be something bigger because remember, I've always wanted to have my own business. So out of school, I started this little business. Wasn't really doing, it was okay, but it wasn't what I thought this was going to be like. So I walked into the store one day and my wife held up a newspaper with Don Jones's face on it. And it said he had just started the Don Jones Center for Entrepreneurial Studies at Carnegie Mellon. My wife said, you should go to this school. That was, again, in the top 3 best advice I ever got. And so I came here, met Don, and I started in the entrepreneurial program. I don't know if any of you are in that, but we had 4 classes. 2 of them were Entrepreneurship 1, Entrepreneurship 2. And we were told, you had to go out and do a project through too many semesters there. And I told you, I have no creativity in me at all, nothing. So I went to Don, who I got to know and who was a great friend of mine, mentor, everything he became. But he said, Len, it's very simple. You find a business where the business owner is in their late 60s or 70s, doesn't have a succession plan, buy the business, grow it, and sell it. And to me, it was like, the clouds parted, the beam of light hit me. And I said, oh my gosh, I can do that. He says, yes, you can. So that's what I worked on doing. And this is, why I'm here today doing this. So that's just a sidestep of it. But so the idea is that you look for these businesses where people, they have a decent business, it's making money, they're doing okay, but they're tired. They don't want to, they're making money, they don't want to put money back into the company. So when I talk about plan to grow and improve the business, generally the best way to do that is ask the seller, say to the seller, if you were my age, I still do that, and I'm 65. I say, if you were my age, or the last business I bought, the guy said, well, I'm a year younger than you. I said, okay, well, if you were younger, what would you do for this business? And they'll tell you. And so now you got kind of a basic framework, because if the business has been around and it's been profitable and it's doing okay, and the person is kind of, coasting along, that means there's a lot of opportunity for growth. And that's what you're there for, is to improve the business and grow it. There are thousands of target companies like this out there. Kippinger's, which writes an investment flyer or magazine, I got it a year or two ago, and it said that over 25% of small businesses in the US are owned by people that are over the age of 65. So that means there's this whole group of people that are out there that have businesses that are doing very well, that are going to want to do something next in their life, retire or something like that are there. And these are businesses that you can go in, operate. Here's the biggest thing. People always say to me, well, what kind of background do you need? Like, I've been in, how many people in here are MBA students? Okay. How many are undergrad? Okay. So I'll talk to the MBA students first. So, they say, well, before I came and got my MBA, I worked in oil and gas, or, I worked in pick with banking, well, how do I, deal with another business that's out there? I finally, a couple of weeks ago, I counted, I think I've been in 10 industries. Okay. And 10 sounds like I rounded. I know, I actually count, I think it's 10. But from telecommunications to sporting goods to fresh sausage to candy, coffee, and nuts to I did beer, I did importing plastic. Anyways, I did all these things. And the point is you don't need to have true industry experience to run these businesses. This is the big advantage to this, because number one, remember, you're coming into a business that has employees, that has people that know how to operate it. You're buying it from somebody who has run that business. They become a consultant for you for a short period of time. What I normally do is join an industry trade group. Every industry has a trade group. You just get immersed in the industry trade group. You meet friends there, you network with people, and now you got buddies, so that when things go crazy, you pick up the phone and you call somebody in the industry. You can learn the industry in 6 months. So don't ever let that be something that hinders you. Now, I would caution you that if you look at a business where the owner is the brains behind it and is the one that there is no group out there like that, maybe stay away from that. But for the most part, I would say 99% of businesses could be run by you. It's that easy. Okay. Here's the bad to it. The process does take a long time, or it could take a long time. Okay. To go out and find the right business, number one. The number two, to make a deal with the buyer, to clear due diligence after you start looking at the company, and to finally get a deal with the buyer could take a long time. The biggest long time is finding the right businesses. Generally, it starts to finish takes about 18 to 24 months. ETA is now becoming an industry. meaning that there's a lot of people doing this thing. There's, I teach it here at Tepper. Most of the business schools teach some form of it. So there's a lot of people that just like me, the clouds part, beam of light hits them when they hear about this and they're out searching for businesses. But that doesn't mean you can't find it. And here's the secret. Well, one of the secrets. Everybody, if you read the books on how to buy a business, or if you read the Stanford white paper on search funds, they all have these certain criteria you need to look for a business. There's 5 of them. It's like multiple, no concentration of customers, the fragmented business, contracts, all these things. What you got to be able to do is every once in a while, step away from that. Maybe it doesn't check 1 or 2 of those boxes. And the reason I say that is if you find a business that's operating, that's making money, that has a history. We bought the George Howe Company in 2021. It's 97 years old. Okay. It's been around since 1927. I can't even think back that far. But anyways, we have our 100th anniversary coming up. But so this business is stuck around. Now, the business, has been around. It's been making money. It's been doing okay. So it's our goal to go in, build it up and grow it. But these businesses exist out there. Did that business check all the boxes? No, it checked like 2, missed 3. But, you look at these businesses and see that they're going on and just find out what are they doing unique that you could build on, okay? So they're out there. So going back to this, so it could take a while to find it. But there's an awful lot of businesses that are available, but some of them aren't that good. Okay. So if you decide that you're going to start looking at biz buy sell on the internet or something like that, you're going to find maybe some businesses that aren't doing very well. So it takes some time to really flush out and find the right business for you. Okay. The one thing you got to be ready for is the good deals come by and they move very quickly. So you have to be prepared. This is that old thing. And I like old, those nice sayings, but I always forget how they go. Opportunity meets preparedness is luck or something like that. So you got to be prepared that when this comes along, you're ready to go. Your relationships with sources, your ability to quickly evaluate and pull the trigger becomes very, very critical at that point. Okay. One of the things that I talk about, well, let me just move to the next slide. Okay. So entrepreneurship by acquisition. Why do you do it? You do it because you get to lead your organization. You do it because you get to take total control of your life. This is what I like about it the best. You're totally investing in you. Okay. You don't have to worry about what the stock market's doing. You don't have to worry about all the stuff that's out there. You're investing in yourself. And it gives you the independence that you control everything. You really control everything in your life. And I will tell you that I make statistics up. Okay. So, but it's for a point. I truly believe that 92% of the population can't do this, can't run a business. Why? Not because they don't have the skill set. Most people like rules and structure. They like to know where do they need to go? What do they need to do for this job? What time do they get home? How much PTO they have? All of that stuff. That's what they like. When you own your own business, what's great about it is you become the business, business becomes you. That doesn't mean you're a workaholic. Everybody always says, oh, you must work all the time. I don't know. Maybe I do. I don't even think about it. The business is me. I'm the business. Okay. It's not like it's somebody, everybody, how many hours a week do you work? I have no idea. Okay. I'm moving. But at the same time, I have a very balanced life. And I deal with my family. I deal with things I like to do. It's great. Okay. So that's the independence. You get high highs and low lows. I talk about, running your own business is like being on a wild roller coaster. Whereas if you have a job, it's being on a merry-go-round. It's pretty steady. You know what it's going to do. You're going to go around in a circle. And when you own your own business, things just fly. The highs and the lows, they do not stop. You get a direct reward of seeing something through, of making decisions, making bad decisions. I can list a whole heck of a lot of bad decisions I've made. Still make them. I could tell you a story now that would blow your mind about how I, I I won't go into the details. I don't have enough time, but I made a really dumb mistake. And then I made the same mistake twice in a row. Like this is all in the past like 3 years. So, but when you're successful, it's a direct reward. It's a great feeling that you work something through. And it's different than satisfying a boss. It's satisfying you. Now you have to deal with investors and your bank and your customers and all of your employees, all of that stuff. But the self-reward is what's paramount. You're constantly learning. This is really, really important. First of all, you can learn industries that did not exist. So the first business I bought out of Tepper, which was called the Graduate School of Industrial Administration, when I graduated from here, our business was we recertified propane cylinders. Now, I didn't even know that industry existed, but we were a Department of Transportation licensed facility to test and recertify propane cylinders. I have no engineering background. I never tested a cylinder. Okay. I never actually did the actual test on a cylinder, but I was able to run that business. Okay. And it was something I learned about. I learned from a banker friend of mine. She told me that she was dealing with a company that does dairy cattle hoof maintenance. Do you get that? Dairy cattle hoof maintenance. I call it, pedicures for cows. But, farmers used to have to make sure that the dairy cattle hoofs were trimmed or something like that, because when they're full of milk, they can't fall over. That's bad. And somebody made a business and went around and does dairy farmers. So, there's all these businesses that exist, which is so exciting because when you start to look for things, you find industries and businesses you didn't know existed. When you're running the business, you also get to use your intuition. Two of the biggest mistakes I made in hiring, I should have listened to my gut, and I didn't. I listened to other people. Big mistake. So you get to really follow what's inside you, and you don't have to worry about somebody else saying, no, that's not the good idea. You should do this. And you might make a mistake. That's okay, but you learn from it and go from there. The greatest thing about it is that, if you're curious and humble, you can be successful. Curious meaning you're willing to go out and talk to people, you'll listen to people, you'll find these types of businesses to be very interesting. And you got to have a little bit of humility. You probably do because you don't think you can run a business. So you'll go in humble because you don't know everything. And if you go with that kind of approach, it really works well. What do I mean by that? Well, when you're out there, well, let me back up. So there was a Yale study, Yale University did a study a few years ago. They asked me to participate. I just didn't have time. But here's what the study was. Kids were taking entrepreneurship through acquisition or in classes in MBA school. And a lot of them don't go out and do this. So here, I give you an example. So I teach entrepreneurship alternatives. That's in Mini 4. So what that is I talk about franchising, I talk about buying a business, I talk about social ventures. I usually have 55 to 60 students. Now I'm teaching entrepreneurship through acquisition, Mini 1. I have about 35 to 40 students. Then I do entrepreneurship through acquisition workshop, which is people that are very serious about doing this. And I cap it at 15 students because we're going to actually work on trying to figure out how to go buy a business, okay? In that slope, if I get one student that goes and does this, I consider myself a success. And that one student doesn't have to do it right after graduation. They call me 2 years later. Oh, by the way, I tell everybody this and I'll tell you this. Because you're listening to me, I'm yours for life. So if you ever decide you're going to do this or you want help with this, just call me, email me or whatever, and I'll be happy to talk to you. I talk to people all the time. And I have success. I had a friend, a former student who worked for 5 years in consulting, or no, it worked somewhere. Anyways, called me, said, hey, I got to get out of this. I worked with him. He ended up buying a business a year ago, February. So I'm yours forever. But anyways, so the Yale study, they sent it out to like 450 kids that took ET. I call you all kids, by the way. entrepreneurship through acquisition. And they said, why didn't you do this? Why did you go get a job? And you know what the number one reason was? Anybody want to guess? Number one reason. Come on. What is it? That was about 3 or 4, but I'm going to talk about stability. Go ahead. What is it?
Going to do it later.
Well, there's a lot of people do that too. You're good. You both got good answers. Come on. What's the number one reason? Try it.
I don't think I'm good enough.
That's it. That was the number one reason. I don't think I can do this. I'm going to tell you, if you go to a school like Carnegie, Mellon, or wherever like that, you could do it because you're smart. Okay. That's all it takes. You got to be smart. You got to have grit. And here's the key thing. Look for Mr. Rogers, who used to film his TV show right in that building back there. I had the pleasure of meeting, by the way. Mr. Rogers says, look for the helpers. That's what you do. You find people that are older, that have done all this kind of stuff, and you get them as advisors. But that's where the humility comes in. You don't know it all, and that's okay. You'll learn it. You're smart. You can pick it up. You'll be fine. You'll learn the industry. You'll make friends in the industry, and then you'll have all these stories about all these different industries you're in. Then you'll be great at parties. Okay. Should you do it? Number one, is your significant other in? Okay, that is truly the most important thing. My wife is great. She's the one that said, you ought to go to this school. Okay, I went to the school. She goes along with whatever I decide I think is like the greatest thing to do. Okay, it's like, okay, that's it. And she supports it, and she'll work with me in it. And the thing that's nice about that is to have somebody that you could talk to and whine to, because when you're running a company, you can't really whine to people you work with necessarily, but it's good to have somebody that you could talk to there. But if your significant other thinks this is really dumb or is concerned about stability, let's talk about stability for a minute. You know, the past couple of years, they've been saying an economic recession's coming. You know, I have this, at the George Howe Company, we have a pension. And every year the pension guy who manages the funds comes and talks to us. So for 3 years, he's been coming saying, whoa, you know, we got to be careful because there's a big recession coming. Well, he came this last year. He said, now I know I've been telling you for 2 years that a big recession's coming and it hasn't come, but you know, it's coming. Okay. So what does that mean? So a year ago, there were people who were getting jobs and the job start dates were getting pushed off. And they were getting pushed off again, to the point that some people said, oh, we're not going to hire you now anymore because we're worried about this big recession, or we lost business or whatever. I'm here to say there's no stability. You want stability? Run your own business, because now you have stability because you're betting on yourself. You're going to make the decisions, and you're going to make really good decisions because you don't want to lose stability, because you're going to want to make sure that you have a paycheck, and you're going to work really, really hard at it and figure things out. That's stability to me. Second, of course, everybody's worried about a loss of salary and benefits. Create it. You create your own salary, create your own benefits. This is what's really interesting. This is probably one of the most fun things that I do. You're not part of a big brand, but you're part of this like CEO owners club, if you will. And you get to know other people that are running businesses, and you get to hear their stories. And it's way more interesting than, you know, the accountants or the salespeople or something in some big brand. To me, it is, okay? You can do it. I am confident. I know so many people that have gone out and been successful. I'll go back to my friend who bought the business a year ago, February. He called me and he said he was struggling a little bit. He said, what do you think about me getting a coach, a manager coach? I said, it's a great idea. Find the helpers, create an advisory board. Yes, but you can still do it. You're intelligent. That's like the number one thing. I don't mean this in any disrespect at all. I don't mean this disrespectful at all. You're probably, if from an intelligence level, the group in this room right here, probably online too, is probably smarter than 85 or 90% of the business owners that are out there. They'll tell you that. They'll tell you, you're smarter than me. You could do this. Because it takes grit to run a business. It takes listening to your gut. It takes that kind of skill set to run this. So I'm just telling you, you could do it. I talked about, well, sure, you lose your colleagues, but you're in a new club. Don't worry about that. The one thing you have to remember is, in a smaller business, it'll lack departments. The first business that I was running while I was going to school here, a friend of mine who helped me sell my sporting goods business had me start this telecommunication business. And I said, well, I want to see your marketing and business plan. And he worked for a Fortune 500 company. And the marketing business plan looked like it was a division of a Fortune 500 company. And I said, there are no revenues. How are we going to do this? You can't do that kind of a business plan for a small business. My point is sometimes you become the HR person or you become the marketing person. You have to make payroll. I had a friend of mine who ran a fund, and he said that they were excited because they were going to invest in this company, $10 million in revenue. It was a cheese company. It was a family business. And I said, who's going to run it? And and he said, well, we got a vice president from Heinz that's going to run it. And I said, that's great. Next time you talk to him, ask him if he ever had to make payroll. Now, if I tell business owners that, every one of them laugh, because we all know that time when it was Tuesday and ADP's pulling $40,000 out of our checking account on Thursday for payroll, and there's only $25,000 in it on Tuesday, and you got to figure out how you're going to make it. People that work for large organizations never think about where their paycheck's coming from. This is stuff that you have to, but to me, that's a lot of fun. I talked about you get to use your intuition. You get to be decisive. This is the greatest thing. You don't get locked in analysis paralysis. I suggest listening to other people, but at some point you got to be decisive. You can't get all of the information, but at some point you got to make a decision. And it's using common sense a lot of time, listening to your gut. To me, that's exhilarating to sit down and figure out things and go. It's energy building. As I mentioned, you're constantly selling. You're selling your employees when things are bad. You're selling your employees when things are good and you need to work overtime this weekend. You're selling your banker on your successes. You're selling your investors. You're selling to your customers. You're selling your vendors on why they should be letting you buy products from them on terms, et cetera, et cetera. It's constant. But here's the secret. Once you do this, there's no going back. And I got a testament to that in my class Monday night. So as I mentioned, ETA, Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition, is becoming its own industry. There are now conferences that universities run on this. Okay. I went to one just to see what it was like. It was Northwestern and University of Chicago do it. It's in, I think it's November 1st if you're interested. But last weekend, a weekend ago, two of the students in my current class went to the Southeast one, which is, it was at Georgetown. It was Georgetown, Duke, North Carolina, and University of Virginia put it on, okay? They went there, and what they do is it's a big networking thing. Meet investors, meet other people looking for businesses, all MBA students, and then they have programs. One of the speakers was a person who had done a search, found a business, bought it, went into bankruptcy. While he was speaking, he said that the bank was foreclosing on his house. And now he's speaking at an ETA conference to give everybody hey, that's a wake-up call. He said he's still going to go do it again because it's that much fun. Okay, so that was like sort of my random sample of one that says that, yes, once you're in, you can't go back. Okay. How do you fund this? This is the next big question. When I go back to the Yale study, I was like, I can't do it. Number two was, I think it's too hard to find a business. Number three was, how do you fund it? Most people say you go to friends and family. I say, be very, very careful. I've heard a lot of bad stories about people who have borrowed money or got investors that are friends or family. Things like, somebody told me one time they bought a restaurant and his brother was an investor and the brother brought all his friends in and they would drink and eat and not pay the bill. And he said, hey, brother, you're supposed to be paying your check. Hey, I'm part owner. I don't do that, and walked out. I mean, so you get bad stuff like that. If the business isn't doing well, can it survive the holiday get together within the family? So just be careful. Look, grandma loves you. If grandma has any money and you ask her for it, she's probably going to give it to you and she'll think your idea is great. Just be careful. It's grandma's money. Okay. Um, Former business associates, those are people who know you, that have seen you work, that they could buy into you. Business owners are great investors because they've done it. They do it. This is what they do. This is what they believe in. So they usually look for investments like that. High net worth individuals. You know, the thing right now is diversification in your investments. So you can invest money in the stock market, you can put money in the bond market, put it in foreign stocks, and invest in small companies. And particularly people who have run small companies know that it's a way of you know, these companies make money. They're all around everywhere. Family offices. These are groups that probably had a business, sold it, have a lot of money, and they're looking to diversify their investments. Search fund funders. Okay. So I'm going to touch just briefly on what a search fund is. A search fund, when I first heard this, I just was shocked. So a search fund is you go out and you raise money to pay yourself and to have expense money to go look for a company to buy. And so people, you go out and you say to somebody, look, I'm raising $300,000 because over the next 2 years, I'm going to look for a business. And when I find that business, if you're one of my search fund sponsors, you get first opportunity to invest at a preferred rate. Are you interested? And I thought, who in the world would give me money to go find a business? And because it could be a bust. Okay. But that's what a search fund is. And there's people out there that do this. There are now funds that only invest in search funds, and search fund people are running search funds who ultimately buy businesses. There's one here in Pittsburgh. So these things are they're there. The other thing is the network. Here's the thing about networking. Regardless of what you do, you don't have to be buying a business. You could go work somewhere. I don't care. You got to constantly be networking. I found the cylinder reconditioning business. I was sending letters to business owners. I was doing all that. I found it through networking. I had a speaker at my class the other night, Carl Kubek, who's a good friend of mine. He has 2 companies right now that he's bought in the last 6 years. He did a search. He came in and talked to my class about how he did his search. Drip email campaigns, 10,000 companies, whittled it down. He found the first business because I think I got this right. He was taking his trash out on Tuesday night, which was trash night. A person, his next door neighbor, was taking their trash out. That person was an insurance agent and said, hey, Carl, I remember you said you're looking for a business to buy. Carl said, yes, I am. The insurance agent said, I have a client who had a deal just fall through. Maybe you want to talk to her. He bought that business. Okay. Because he told people this is what he's doing. You got to tell people this is what you're doing. You got to meet with people and say, this is what I want to do. I want to find a business for sale. So that's just in looking for a business. But regardless of whatever you do, just talk to people. That people, I always say people buy from people. People want to help people. So if you let them know what you're doing, you're looking for a new job, whatever it is, looking for a house. I mean, people will help you find and connect you with people. So keep networking. And the last one is, did I mention networking? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so for example, I imagine you want to do some convincing to get these funds. And since you're not a part of the company you intend to buy, how would you get the information necessary to convince the people that the financial information all these?
Oh, okay. We'll go real fast. Ready? So once you find, most companies will, if a company's being sold by a broker, there'll be this teaser sheet where they'll just give you some high level information. Then you sign a non-disclosure agreement. When you sign a non-disclosure agreement or confidentiality agreement, here's the thing, that's real. That's a real legal document. What you're saying is, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about your company. I expect you to tell me everything, but I'm not going to tell anybody else about this. Okay. And you got to keep it confidential. Owners are very, very nervous that people are going to find out their business is for sale. They're nervous their employees are going to find out. They're nervous their customers are going to find out. So they get the heebie-jeebies when you say, I want to start looking at your business. So you sign a confidentiality agreement. And from that, you gather some financial information. And if the thing makes sense, you do what's called a letter of intent, where you say, I'm going to pay you this amount of money as long as your due diligence checks out. And then if they sign the letter of intent, that means you have a certain period of time where they have to share everything about the business with you. Okay. That's when you can go back to your investors and say, look, I vetted this business. Here's what it does. Here's what it's made in the past, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then they can buy into that. Okay. Now, I gave you a very high level, but it works that way. Okay. Any other questions? Yes. Michael.
For a while now, and I've developed a very different approach to investors. I would like to hear your advice. So, because most VCs that I get in touch with are wasting my time. So the number one goal, because for an early startup, getting in touch with VC, it's going to happen every 6 to 8 months or so. So my approach is to try to contain their time wastefulness as much as possible. So usually I don't network at all with them. If they want to approach me, they have to, find a friend to refer. When I need the money, and my philosophy is that if I have a good solid product with solid numbers, they'll definitely find me. They have so much money, they have nowhere else to invest. So I would prefer it that way because now the power dynamics shift from them to me, and I get to make the choice. And I would like to hear your advice.
I think you could speed the process up of getting investors if you go talk to them. I think waiting for them to find you could be, I don't know how they're going to find you. What are you doing to, you got to be doing something to get to the person that's going to tell them to call you.
That's right. But usually I think there's just, you can find a wedge to the network. And, there are just so many competitions and pitch demos and, some investor friends that could recommend me to the circle. But for every year, about 2 or 3 months, I'll dedicate myself entirely almost to the fundraising. And it worked out pretty well. And all the other time I'll dedicate to the business itself.
Okay. Well, if it's working for you, that's great. I mean, I'm giving you just some pointers. This stuff, there's no books written about this. There probably are, but I mean, it's whatever works. That's the way I look at it. And it's like do everything. Now, as far as investors though, when you go, yes.
Question about the search funds that you mentioned. So especially when you're entering a study in a field you've never been before, how do you go about convincing them that you're actually looking for money, and how do you optimize to get as much money as you can from the search?
Okay, so in a search fund, first of all, you got to have a budget. You can't get all the money you can from the searchers. You have a budget that makes sense. I'm going to pay myself X dollars a year. I need this in healthcare benefits. I need money to do due diligence. I need money to search. I need all that stuff. So you have a budget. When you talk to the investors, and just for the people online, the question was, how do you talk to the investors if you've never done this before? Why would they give you money? Which is what I thought 10 years ago. So when I talk to investors now, people that are investing in search funds, and I say, what are you looking for? They say 2 things. We're looking for grit. You've heard me say that before. We're looking for somebody who is determined to do this. They don't come in and say, well, I realize this job market's a little soft right now, so I think maybe I'll see if I can find a business for sale. No, you got to say, I tell my kids this, not my kids, the students. I tell the students this, you got to say, oh my gosh, I took this class. It's called Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition. And this guy, Len Caric, teaches it. I tried that in just for PR. Anyways, I took this class. I didn't know that this existed. This is like the greatest thing. This is what I'm doing. Okay. You have to have that kind of determination. And you got to say, no matter what, I'm going to find a company. I'm going to grow that company. I'm going to buy that company and grow it. You got to go in with it and with the attitude that this is not 9 to 5. This is something I'm going to really work at. That's the number one thing they look for. The second thing is a little bit of humility. That's what your goal is. You don't know everything. but you're going to go out and figure it out. That's what I've talked to numerous investors, and that's what they say. In the investor world, there's a saying that goes, the investors bet the jockey, not the horse. I think I got that right. Meaning they bet on the person, not on the business necessarily. Business got to be good, but they're looking at who's going to run it. And if that person checks off with them, that's good. Now, on the flip side, this thing about investors, and to Michael's point back there, you got to make sure you can work with these people. It's not oh, please, 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 please give me your money. Sort of is that. But once they say, okay, maybe I will, now you got to make sure you got to interview the investor too. You got to make sure you can work with them. You got to understand what's their background. If they've made other investments in small companies, talk to those people. How's this person to work with? Do they give you leeway? Are they over your shoulder all the time? I mean, you want to make it a process for you too, that you might say, you know what, this investor, I appreciate that you're willing to give me money, but I don't think it really works for us. Thank you. Okay. But the investors that are out there, they're not dumb people, but they're just looking for that burningness inside you. That's what it's got to be. Okay. Any other questions? I like questions because then nobody falls asleep. Yeah.
So networking has always been a weak area with subs, but I think why it has been weak is as an MBA student, right, I'm really want to pursue entrepreneurship. Now there are various forms. There's high growth where you make your own. There's entrepreneurship acquisition. There's franchising. So when you talk about determination and clarity that this is what I'm doing, and if I want to go out and I want to tell people what I'm doing, well, how do you know that in the early stages? Because you might have an idea which works or does not work. If it does not work, you don't want to give up on entrepreneurship. You are open to looking through acquisition or through franchising. So I'm just wondering how do you frame your questions or your dialogue
To investors or to just people?
to the audience?
So the question is, how do you go out and network and have the firm belief in what you're doing? Is that a good way to put it?
In entrepreneurship.
In entrepreneurship.
Normally people will be like, what's your idea? Or like, what do you want to do?
Yeah. Well, see, if you have a great idea like Michael does, then you have an idea, you can explain it. If you don't have an idea, you say, I'm going to go buy somebody else's company and see what's out there. Okay. Now you gotta bring it in a little bit. Okay. And you have to start with what's called a thesis. Like, what companies are you going to look at? What companies do you think you'd be interested in buying? Okay. You got to start somewhere. Now, the thing is though, you could start looking like that, but something can come flying in that you never heard about, that, you do dairy cow nail maintenance. You never heard about that industry. You might just go look at that. But the idea is that you're committed in finding an opportunity like that. Now, if you have an idea, that's different. Then you talk about your idea and let people know that.
Oh, that helps. The
Good.
funding.
Yeah, you got to get it narrowed to something that you can talk about.
You have an idea in a particular industry. You don't know if it will work or work, but you are open to acquiring businesses in the same sphere and talk about it.
Yeah, so the question, just for the people online, is that you start somewhere and at least you have direction, but you can go outside that. So I had a student who years ago was looking for the typical HVAC, heating and air conditioning company, elevator maintenance, all of these types of things. He said, I want something that you have a blue collar workforce, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He ended up buying a software company. I mean, one thing led to one thing, led to another thing, and he ended up there, and it was like, hey, this looks pretty neat, and that's what he bought. Okay, so it's just having some sort of focus. But what investors bring is they become a sounding board. Remember, I told you, you look for the people that have done it before, you look for the people that can help you. Here they are. Okay, they can give you introductions to banks, to other investors. Anytime you talk to an investor and an investor says, yep, sign me up, I'm in, the next question from you is, who else should I be talking to? Is there anybody else in your network you can connect me with? And just like VCs, investors like to get other investors involved because it's like a check on you or the business that you're buying. It's like, well, I think it's a really good idea, but if I call my friend Mary, and see what she thinks about it. If she's in, well, now I even feel better about it. And that's how the world works. VCs do the same things. They'll have connections with attorneys, accountants, etc. They may know some sellers. They may know people that are selling businesses because they are in the small business world. They can give you support. They can be part of your board of directors, particularly if they have a large investment. They will probably want to be a part of your board of directors, and they'll help you early on in running the company. You know, some of the best advice I got, when we bought our first company, we got to the point where we were going to have an outside board. And my business partner said, we need some outside help. I say, great. What do we do? He says, you pick somebody, I'll pick somebody, we'll put them on the board of directors. But they had to be somebody that fit. I picked on Jones, who came on, and he brought this guy named Ron Hawkins on. I still, 5 businesses later, I still call Ron for help. I mean, this guy's he's a genius as far as I'm concerned. He's helped me in so many ways. It's unbelievable. So how do you do a search? How do you find these businesses? You could talk to investment bankers / business brokers. Those are people that list businesses for sale. The good thing about them is the business is for sale. The second thing is they will help you in the process of gathering information on the company. They will also make realistic. They will tell the seller what's a realistic estimated value of the business. So they do a lot of help there. The downside to that is they're going to put it out to everybody because they usually get paid off of a commission of selling the business. So they want the whole world to know. So now you got a lot of competition. You can talk to professionals, CPAs, financial planners, attorneys, insurance people like my friend Carl, you know, was told his next door neighbor, I'm looking for a business to buy. Next door neighbor's client, deal fell through, saw Carl taking his trash out. There you go. A great one is a direct connect. Just send a letter to people. Carl did it through email. Business owners. I sent letters and I said, dear successful business owner, you know, dear Miss Smith, my name's Len. I was at the time a student at Carnegie Mellon. I'm looking to network with successful business people like you to find a business that would be available for sale. Yeah, I'm not the one that takes the approach of hitting them over the head. I want to buy your business. I take the softer approach with, do you know anybody that wants to sell their business? And hopefully they say, you know, I am interested. But that way you don't have competition because you're the only one who's contacted them. Number 2, it could be a little bit harder to get the information because they've never done this before, most of them. Number 3, they might have very high expectations of what their business is worth. So it could be a little dicey there. You want to start with, as I mentioned earlier, a thesis. You can't, you know, talk to everybody in the world. You got to kind of narrow it down to something. So what I narrowed mine down when I was looking originally was I wanted something that was light manufacturing, preferably metals, you know, something that's Western Pennsylvania was a steel town, something that bent metal or did something with metal and ended up, that's what we did with the cylinder business. We welded, we painted, we did all these things with metal cylinders. Network, just talk to everybody. Talk to everybody, let them know what you're doing. If you're working somewhere, you probably don't want to tell your boss that. But everybody else you want to let know. And I don't know if I mentioned networking before, but I'll mention it again. Search is an industry. So this is how this thing has become. When I started searching, which was 1993, and you know, as I like to say it, back then we had to climb up the hill twice or both ways in the 10 feet of snow because I used to have to go down to the library in Pittsburgh, Business Library, flip open this thing called a Thomas Register, write down names of businesses and all the information because you weren't allowed to make copies of the pages of the Thomas Register, and bring it home and send letters. But this thing has become, it's great. So now, and most people do at that time what's called a self-funded search, meaning you don't go out and raise money for a search fund. You just like suck it up and go and search on your own. That's what I did. I have 2 students right now who are former students that are searching. Their spouse both have, you know, jobs that gives them health care and money, so they're able to search. So that's a self-funded search. We talked about raising a search fund. There are now, and there are search funds, which I told you about. There are people that will only invest in search funds and then invest in what they're found. Now there's also these search fund accelerators. By the way, if anybody is interested, my friend Tim Bavard from a company called Search Fund Accelerators. So if you go to his website, searchfundaccelerators.com, which is a mouthful. Tim, here's what Tim does. Tim has raised a lot of money. He hires you as a searcher. So he pays you a salary, puts you in an office, has weekly training sessions for you, has people that go out and do due diligence for you, has pretty much everything. All you got to do is talk to, find companies that might be available for sale and talk to the owners and close the deal. He has a whole organization. I have 2 students that are currently searching with him. I have another Tepper graduate, it was before I started teaching, who is running a pump company down in Houston that went through Search Fund Accelerators. But Tim's going to be here on Monday, September 23rd. He's doing a talk here at 5 o'clock in the evening if you want to hear about that. And then now there are companies out there that have raised funds. They want searchers and they do what's called a CXO fund. What this is they hire you to go work with one of their CEOs in one of their portfolio companies. You might go in as vice president of operations or something like that. And then they continue to look for a company for sale. And when they find one, if you're doing a great job, they pluck you out of that company and insert you as a CEO over there. As I mentioned, I teach classes on this. So this is out there. All the big schools, all the schools practically have some sort of class on entrepreneurship through acquisition. And now there's conferences. As I mentioned, the Southeast Conference, the conference that's going to be in Chicago. Harvard has a conference, I think, in October or coming up. MIT does one in the spring. I heard Wharton's going to do one. So this thing's out there. It's an industry. Okay. That was an awful lot of information. Any other questions? I think I still have time. Yes. Do I have time? Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
What's your best way to contact me if you have any questions?
Me?
This, yeah.
You can email me. Okay. My email is very easy. I won't give you my Carnegie Mellon. Not that it's a secret, but my other one's easier. Len, L-E-N, at Len Caric, LENCARIC.com. Okay, sure. Any other questions? Yes.
Have you ever been in a situation in which you bought a company and maybe the key employees or some key employees left? Because you mentioned that you might not need to have so much knowledge into the company's operations, but what if the key people leave?
Yes. So the question for those online is, have I ever stepped into a company where key employees left? I would say I asked more people to leave than left. So what I mean by that is, you go into the company and I generally say for a certain period of time, some people say 3 months, some people say 6 months, some people say a year. I don't know what the time frame is. You'll know it when you're there. Don't do anything. Just go in and ask questions, watch everything. You'll quickly find out who's going to make it with you and who's not. Okay. Unfortunately, a lot of people, here's the thing, people don't like change. Okay. My business partner always does this. Let me see if I do this. Fold your arms. Okay, everybody fold your arms. This is the quiz that you have to do. Okay, fold your arms. All right, now try and fold them the other way. It'll drive you crazy. Okay, and try and sit like with your arms folded. Nobody likes change. You've come in and bought the business. You are now change. Therefore, nobody likes you because they're afraid of you. And they've watched all those movies where mean MBA people take over companies and they fire everybody and they cut everybody's salary and they move everything and all of that junk. Okay. So they're all nervous. Keep in mind that these people, this is their job. This is the other thing that one time I was looking at our payroll at the end of the year. We had a sausage business called Uncle Charlie's. Our payroll was $1.2 million. And I thought, that's a pretty big responsibility. I'm responsible. I'm making decision for, at that time, I don't know, 60 employees or something like that. This is their livelihood. So people generally don't want to, very rarely do they just want to skip out because there's a new owner. They're nervous for sure. And they're worried they're going to be let go. But I'm trying to think, I don't think I've ever had anybody who's left. Like I said, usually after a year, I might ask a few people to leave because they can't come along for the ride. You know, they're too stuck in the old way. That's the other thing. I try to get the owners out as soon as possible. People say, well, you should get an owner and stay for 2 or 3 years. I will drive each other nuts. You know, I do consulting agreements with the owners because they have a lot of knowledge. But and you make generally, I have to say, 3 main businesses I've gone into, McKnight Cylinder, Uncle Charlie Sausage, and George Howe Company. The employees within 6 to 12 months had a better pay scale with me than they did with the former owners. Because I went in, and a lot of times they were being underpaid. So you just have to win them over in that first 90 days, 6 months, a year. You have to win them over. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you for your lecture.
Sure.
Please suggest some common pitfalls to avoid during the acquisition process.
Some common pitfalls to avoid. Don't fall in love with the business. That's the biggest. I've seen too many people who they've been looking for a business for a couple years. They finally get one. They get the owner to agree to a price. They start doing due diligence. And now they're so excited that they're going to actually buy a business. They put blinders on to everything beside them. I worked with a couple of people not too long ago. We were going to buy this one business. And during due diligence, we found something that wasn't very good. But we figured out how to mitigate that, okay? Then we found something else that wasn't too good. We figured out how to mitigate that. Pretty soon we had about 6 things that were very major. And we said, well, this last one, we could probably, and I said, wait a minute, we have 6 of these. 1, we could probably take care of. 2 will be a stretch. 6, I'm done. I can't do this. Now, the other people were in love with the business because we were getting to an end. We had somebody who was going to run it. They were going to quit their job, all this stuff. But that's probably the biggest thing. Just don't fall in love with the business. Be able to walk away. And keep in mind, anytime you negotiate, I don't care if you're negotiating to buy a house. I don't care if you're negotiating to buy a job or get a job, buy a business, buy a car, anything. If you can walk away, you're in control. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Especially for the investment part, and which information you need to provide. So, for example, if you only has your idea, you don't have any prototype, or even you don't have any team, and you want to share your idea, do you think it's good start? After investment, just beginning with your idea.
Yes. So the question is, do you talk to investors when you just have an idea? Yes. You want to talk to as many people as you can when you have an idea. Now, I will caution you. Have everybody sign a non-disclosure agreement. Okay. You know, those work. You know, a non-disclosure agreement says that just that. I'm going to tell you about my idea, but you can't tell anybody. And not only can you not tell anybody, you can't steal my idea. If they sign that, then talk to them. Most people will sign non-disclosure agreements. Nobody wants to steal. I mean, if they do, then you probably don't want them anyways. If somebody refuses to sign a non-disclosure agreement, you probably don't want to talk to them anyways. But yeah, the earlier you can get money in, the better. You don't want to be at the point where you need money and you're going out looking for it. That'll delay everything. That'll delay the whole process. So you want to have the investors in front of it. So as in my case, if I'm looking for a business to buy, I want to know that I have investors over here that know I'm looking, so that when I find something, I can pick up the phone and say, hey, I found something. You want to take a look at it? Yes. You don't want to find something and then say, oh, geez, I better start calling people. Who do I call? You want to kind of do both at the same time. Same thing with a startup. You have an idea. The other thing with that kind of background is it gives you an opportunity to get other people's opinions about it. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Mike.
It's about the 2 classes you're teaching, the alternatives and through acquisition. Which one do you recommend?
Oh, take all 3. No, you know, so let me give you, here's my plug. So entrepreneurship alternatives. That's talking through on a broad basis what's out there. A lot of people don't know that buying a business is entrepreneurship. A lot of people don't know about franchising. Okay, they've heard about it. They know McDonald's franchise it, that's all they know. So it gives people an opportunity to just explore that. Entrepreneurship through acquisition, which is mini one, is starting to talk specifically about buying a business. Okay, so that gets a little bit deeper there. If you like that and you say, hey, I think I'm going to give us here's my goal. Okay. I want to give us a try. Then you take workshop. In entrepreneurship through acquisition workshop, we talk about finding companies that might be for sale, doing a thesis on what types of companies you're looking for, starting to write a private placement memorandum for investors. The goal is that in mini 3 and mini 4, for your capstone project, you actually launch a search. Okay. So we had one student, Jake Cervella, who I love Jake. Jake was the fastest student out of, I think, the fastest student out of this school to buy a business. He did that. He worked everything. His capstone project was to do a search. He had a geographical search around Seattle, Washington. By graduation, he had something in the works, and in September he bought a business. So 4 months after he graduated, he was running the company. He sometimes speaks in my class. Any other questions? Yes.
ETA, do you usually like buy 100% of the business, or is there a case like you invest like the majority and you still let the owners run business?
So you buy the whole business. You know, you might not own 100% of the stock. You might own a certain percentage, and your investors own the rest. But you generally want the other owner out. That's my philosophy. There are other people that, Carl, when he's my buddy to talk the other night, when he started, he thought he would go in as a minority operator, invest and buy part of the company, like 30%, and then put cash in to help grow the company, bring his expertise, blah, blah, blah. You want to take control of the company. You want it. Okay. That it. Okay, thank you all for coming. It was great to see you all. Oh, geez, I'm embarrassed.